I remembered an exquisite perceptual distortion, a hallucination of sorts, which I had had and thought was the product of a play between a most dense fog and an electrical storm that was occurring at the same time. I narrated to them the episode and added that Don Juan had never really directly taught me anything about the fog or the smoke. His procedure had been to build fires or to take me into fog banks. La Gorda did not say a word. She stood up and went back to the stove. Lydia shook her head and clicked her tongue. "You sure are dumb," she said. "The Nawal taught you everything. How do you think you saw what you have just told us about?" There was an abyss between our understanding of how to teach something. I told him that if I were to teach them something I knew, such as how to drive a car, I would go step by step, making sure that they understood every facet of the whole procedure. La Gorda returned to the table. "That's only if the sorcerer is teaching something about the tonal," she said. "When the sorcerer is dealing with the Nawal, he must give the instruction, which is to show the mystery to the warrior. And that's all he has to do. The warrior who receives the mysteries must claim knowledge as power by doing what he has been shown. The Nawal showed you more mysteries than all of us together, but you're lazy, like Pablito, and prefer to be confused. The Tonal and the Nawal are two different worlds. In one you talk, in the other you act." At the moment she spoke, her words made absolute sense to me. I knew what she was talking about. She went back to the stove, stirred something in a pot, and came back again. "Why are you so dumb?" Lydia bluntly asked me. "He's empty," Rosa replied. They made me stand up and forced themselves to squint as they scanned my body with their eyes. All of them touched my umbilical region. "But why are you still empty?" Lydia asked. "You know what to do, don't you?" Rosa added. "He was crazy," Josefina said to them. "He must still be crazy now." La Gorda came to my aid and told them that I was still empty for the same reason they still had their form. All of us secretly did not want the world of the Nawal. We were afraid and had second thoughts. In short, none of us was better than Pablito. They did not say a word. All three of them seemed thoroughly embarrassed. "Poor little Nawal," Lydia said to me, with a tone of genuine concern. "You're as scared as we are. I pretend to be tough. Josefina pretends to be crazy. Rosa pretends to be ill-tempered. And you pretend to be dumb." They laughed, and for the first time since I had arrived, they made a gesture of comradeship toward me. They embraced me and put their heads against mine. La Gorda sat facing me, and the little sisters sat around her. I was facing all four of them. "Now we can talk about what happened tonight," La Gorda said. "The Nawal told me that if we survived the last contact with the Allies, we wouldn't be the same. The Allies did something to us tonight. They have hurled us away." She gently touched my writing hand. "Tonight was a special night for you," she went on. "Tonight all of us pitched in to help you, including the Allies. The Nawal would have liked it. Tonight you saw all the way through. I did? I asked. There you go again, Lydia said, and everybody laughed. Tell me about my scene, Gorda, I insisted. You know that I'm dumb. There should be no misunderstandings between us. All right, she said. I see what you mean. Tonight you saw the little sisters. I said to them that I had also witnessed incredible acts performed by Don Juan and Don Gennaro. I had seen them as plainly as I had seen the little sisters, and yet Don Juan and Don Gennaro had always concluded that I had not seen. I failed. Therefore, to determine in what way could the acts of the little sisters be different. You mean you didn't see how they were holding on to the lines of the world? She asked. No, I didn't. You didn't see them slipping through the crack between the worlds? I narrated to them what I had witnessed. They listened in silence. At the end of my account, La Gorda seemed to be on the verge of tears. What a pity, she exclaimed. She stood up and walked around the table and embraced me. Her eyes were clear and restful. I knew she bore no malice toward me. It's our fate that you are plugged up like this, she said. But you're still the Nahual to us. I won't hinder you with ugly thoughts. You can at least be assured of that. I knew what she meant. I knew that she meant it. She was speaking to me from a level that I had witnessed only in Don Juan. She had repeatedly explained her mood as the product of having lost her human form. She was indeed a formless warrior. A wave of profound affection for her enveloped me. I was about to weep. It was at that instant that I felt she was a most marvelous warrior, that quite an intriguing thing happened to me. The closest way of describing it would be to say that I felt that my ears had suddenly popped, except that I felt the popping in the middle of my body, right below my navel, more acutely than in my ears. Right after the popping, everything became clearer. Sounds, sights, odors. Then I felt an intense buzzing, which oddly enough did not interfere with my hearing capacity. The buzzing was loud, but it did not drown out any other sounds. It was as if I were hearing the buzzing with some part of me other than my ears. A hot flash went through my body. And then suddenly, I recalled something I had never seen. It was as though an alien memory had taken possession of me. I remembered Lydia pulling herself from two horizontal reddish ropes as she walked on the wall. She was not really walking. She was actually gliding on a thick bundle of lines that she held with her feet. I remembered seeing her panting with her mouth open from the exertion of pulling the reddish ropes. The reason I could not hold my balance at the end of her display was because I was seeing her as a light that went around the room so fast that it made me dizzy. It pulled me from the area around my navel. I remembered Rosa's actions and Josefina's as well. Rosa had actually brachiated with her left arm, holding on to long, vertical, reddish fibers that looked like vines dropping from the dark roof. With her right arm, she was also holding some vertical fibers that seemed to give her stability. She also held onto the same fibers with her toes. Toward the end of her display, she was like a phosphorescence on the roof. The lines of her body had been erased. Josefina was hiding herself behind some lines that seemed to come out of the floor. What she was doing with her raised forearm was moving the lines together to give them the necessary width to conceal her bulk. Her puffed up clothes were a great prop. They had somehow contracted her luminosity. The clothes were bulky only for the eye that looked. At the end of her display, Josefina, like Lydia and Rosa, was just a patch of light. I could switch from one recollection to the other in my mind. When I told them about my concurrent memories, the little sisters looked at me bewildered. La Gorda was the only one who seemed to be following what was happening to me. She laughed with true delight and said that the Nahual was right in saying that I was too lazy to remember what I had seen. Therefore, I only bothered with what I had looked at. Is it possible, I thought to myself, that I am unconsciously selecting what I recall? Or is it La Gorda who is creating all this? If it was true that I had selected my recall at first and then released what I had censored, then it also had to be true that I must have perceived much more of Don Juan's and Don Gennaro's actions. And yet I could only recall a selective part of my total perception of those events. It's hard to believe, I said to La Gorda, that I can remember now something I didn't remember at all a while ago. The Nahual said that everyone can see, and yet we choose not to remember what we see, she said. Now I understand how right he was. All of us can see, some more than others. I told La Gorda that some part of me knew that I had found then a transcendental key. A missing piece had been handed down to me by all of them, but it was difficult to discern what it was. She announced that she had just seen that I had practiced a good deal of dreaming, and that I had developed my attention, and yet I was fooled by my own appearance of not knowing anything. I've been trying to tell you about attention, she proceeded, but you know as much as we do about it. I assured her that my knowledge was intrinsically different from theirs. Theirs was infinitely more spectacular than mine. Anything they might say to me in relation to their practices, therefore, was a bonus to me. The Nahual told us to show you that with our attention we can hold the images of a dream in the same way we hold the images of the world, La Gorda said. The art of the dreamer is the art of attention. Thoughts came down on me like a landslide. I had to stand up and walk around the kitchen. I sat down again. We remained quiet for a long time. I knew what she had meant when she said that the art of dreamers was the art of attention. I knew then that Don Juan had told me and showed me everything he could. I had not been able, however, to realize the premises of his knowledge in my body while he was around. He had said that my reason was the demon that kept me chained, and that I had to vanquish it if I wanted to achieve the realization of his teachings. The issue, therefore, had been how to vanquish my reason. It had never occurred to me to press him for a definition of what he meant by reason. I presumed all along that he meant the capacity for comprehending, inferring, or thinking in an orderly, rational way. From what La Gorda had said, I knew that to him reason meant attention. Don Juan said that the core of our being was the act of perceiving, and that the magic of our being was the act of awareness. For him, perception and awareness were a single, functional, inextricable unit, a unit which had two domains. The first one was the attention of the tonal, that is to say, the capacity of average people to perceive and place their awareness on the ordinary world of everyday life. Don Juan also called this form of attention our first ring of power, and described it as our awesome but taken for granted ability to impart order to our perception of our daily world. The second domain was the attention of the Nawal, that is to say, the capacity of sorcerers to place their awareness on the non-ordinary world. He called this domain of attention the second ring of power, or the altogether portentous ability that all of us have, but only sorcerers use, to impart order to the non-ordinary world. La Gorda and the Little Sisters, in demonstrating to me that the art of dreamers was to hold the images of their dreams with their attention, had brought in the pragmatic aspect of Don Juan's scheme. They were the practitioners who had gone beyond the theoretical aspect of his teachings. In order to give me a demonstration of that art, they had to make use of their second ring of power, or the attention of the Nawal. In order for me to witness their art, I had to do the same. In fact, it was evident that I had placed my attention on both domains. Perhaps all of us are continually perceiving in both fashions, but choose to isolate one for recollection and discard the other. Or perhaps we file it away, as I myself had done. Under certain conditions of stress or acquiescence, the censored memory surfaces, and we can then have two distinct memories of one event. What Don Juan had struggled to vanquish, or rather suppress in me, was not my reason as the capacity for rational thought, but my attention of the tonal, or my awareness of the world of common sense. His motive for wanting me to do was explained by La Gorda when she said that the daily world exists because we know how to hold its images. Consequently, if one drops the attention needed to maintain those images, the world collapses. The Nawal told us that practice is what counts, La Gorda said suddenly. Once you get your attention on the images of your dream, your attention is hooked for good. In the end, you can be like Gennaro, who could hold the images of any dream. We each have 5 other dreams, Lydia said. But we showed you the first one because that was the dream the Nawal gave us. Can all of you go into dreaming anytime you want? I asked. No, La Gorda replied. Dreaming takes too much power. None of us has that much power. The reason the little sisters had to roll on the floor so many times was that in rolling, the earth was giving them energy. Maybe you could also remember seeing them as luminous beings getting energy from the light of the earth. The Nawal said that the best way of getting energy is, of course, to let the sun inside the eyes, especially the left eye. I told her that I knew nothing about it, and she described a procedure that Don Juan had taught them. As she spoke, I remembered that Don Juan had also taught the same procedure to me. It consisted in moving my head slowly from side to side as I caught the sunlight with my half-closed left eye. He said that one could not only use the sun, but could use any kind of light that could shine on the eyes. La Gorda said that the Nawal had recommended that they tie their shawls below their waists in order to protect their hip bones when they rolled. I commented that Don Juan had never mentioned rolling to me. She said that only women could roll because they had wombs, and energy came directly into their wombs. By rolling around, they distributed that energy over the rest of their bodies. In order for a man to be energized, he had to be on his back, with his knees bent so that the soles of his feet touched each other. His arms had to be extended laterally, with his forearms raised vertically, and the fingers clawed in an upright position. We have been dreaming those dreams for years, Lydia said. Those dreams are our best because our attention is complete. In the other dreams that we have, our attention is still shaky. La Gorda said that holding the images of dreams was a Toltec art. After years of consuming practice, each one of them was able to perform one act in any dream. Lydia could walk on anything. Rosa could dangle from anything. Josefina could hide behind anything, and she herself could fly. But they were only beginners, apprentices of the art. They had complete attention for only one activity. She added that Gennaro was the master of dreaming and could turn the tables around and have attention for as many activities as we have in our daily life, and that for him the two domains of attention had the same value. I felt compelled to ask them my usual question. I had to know their procedures, how they held the images of their dreams. You know that as well as we do, La Gorda said. The only thing I can say is that after going to the same dream over and over, we began to feel the lines of the world. They helped us to do what you saw us doing. Don Juan had said that our first ring of power is engaged very clearly in our lives, and that we live under the impression that that is all there is to us. Our second ring of power, the attention of the Nawal, remains hidden for the immense majority of us, and only at the moment of our death is it revealed to us. There is a pathway to reach it, however, which is available to every one of us, but which only sorcerers take, and that pathway is through dreaming. Dreaming was in essence the transformation of ordinary dreams into affairs involving volition. Dreamers, by engaging their attention of the Nawal and focusing it on the items and events of their ordinary dreams, change those dreams into dreaming. Don Juan said that there were no procedures to arrive at the attention of the Nawal. He only gave me pointers. Finding my hands in my dreams was the first pointer. Then the exercise of paying attention was elongated to finding objects, looking for specific features such as buildings, streets, and so on. From there, the jump was to dreaming about specific places at specific times of the day. The final stage was drawing the attention of the Nawal to focus on the total self. Don Juan said that the final stage was usually ushered in by a dream that many of us have had at one time or another, in which one is looking at oneself sleeping in bed. By the time a sorcerer has had such a dream, his attention has been developed to such a degree that instead of waking himself up, as most of us would do in a similar situation, he turns on his heels and engages himself in activity, as if he were acting in the world of everyday life. From that moment on, there is a breakage, a division of sorts in the otherwise unified personality. The result of engaging the attention of the Nawal and developing it to the height and sophistication of our daily attention of the world was, in Don Juan's scheme, the other self, an identical being as oneself, but made in dreaming. Don Juan had told me that there are no definite standard steps for teaching that double, as there are no definite steps for us to reach our daily awareness. We simply do it by practicing. He contended that in the act of engaging our attention of the Nawal, we would find the steps. He urged me to practice dreaming without letting my fears make it into an encumbering production. He had done the same with La Gorda and the little sisters, but obviously something in them had made them more receptive to the idea of another level of attention. Gennaro was in his body of dreaming most of the time, La Gorda said. He liked it better. That's why he could do the weirdest things and scare you half to death. Gennaro could go in and out of the crack between the worlds like you and I can go in and out of a door. Don Juan had also talked to me at great length about the crack between the worlds. I had always believed that he was talking in a metaphorical sense about a subtle division between the world that the average man perceives and the world that sorcerers perceive. La Gorda and the little sisters had shown me that the crack between the worlds was more than a metaphor. It was rather the capacity to change levels of attention. One part of me understood La Gorda perfectly. while another part of me was more frightened than ever. You have been asking where the Nahual and Gennaro went, La Gorda said. Soledad was very blunt and told you that they went to the other world. Lydia told you they left this area. The Gennaros were stupid and scared you. The truth is that the Nahual and Gennaro went through the crack. For some reason, undefinable to me, her statements plunged me into profound chaos. I had felt all along that they had left for good. I knew that they had not left in an ordinary sense, but I had kept that feeling in the realm of a metaphor. Although I had even voiced it to close friends, I think I never really believed it myself. In the depths of me, I had always been a rational man. But La Gorda and the Little Sisters had turned my obscure metaphors into real possibilities. La Gorda had actually transported us half a mile with the energy of her dreaming. La Gorda stood up and said that I had understood everything and that it was time for us to eat. She served us the food that she had cooked. I did not feel like eating. At the end of the meal, she stood up and came to my side. I think it's time for you to leave, she said to me. That seemed to be a cue for the Little Sisters. They also stood up. If you stay beyond this moment, you won't be able to leave anymore, La Gorda went on. The Nahual gave you freedom once, but you chose to stay with him. He told me that if we all survived the last contact with the Allies, I should feed all of you, make you feel good, and then say goodbye to all of you. I figured that the Little Sisters and myself have no place to go, so there is no choice for us. But you are different. The Little Sisters surrounded me, and each said goodbye to me. There was a monstrous irony in that situation. I was free to leave, but I had no place to go. There was no choice for me either. Years before, Don Juan gave me a chance to back out. I stayed because already then I had no place to go. We choose only once, he had said then. We choose either to be warriors or to be ordinary men. A second choice does not exist, not on this earth. Chapter 6. The second attention. You have to leave later on today, La Gorda said to me right after breakfast. Since you have decided to go with us, you have committed yourself to helping us fulfill our new task. The Nahual left me in charge only until you came. He entrusted me, as you already know, with certain things to tell you. I told you most of them, but there are still some I couldn't mention to you until you made your choice. Today, we will take care of them. Right after that, you must leave in order to give us time to get ready. We need a few days to settle everything and to prepare to leave these mountains forever. We have been here a very long time. It's hard to break away. But everything has come to a sudden end. The Nahual warned us of the total change that you would bring, regardless of the outcome of your bouts. But I think no one really believed him. I fail to see why you have to change anything, I said. I've explained it to you already, she protested. We have lost our old purpose. Now we have a new one, and that new purpose requires that we become as light as the breeze. The breeze is our new mood. It used to be the hot wind. You have changed our direction. You are talking in circles, Gorda. Yes, but that's because you're empty. I can't make it any clearer. When you return, the Gennaros will show you the art of the stalker. And right after that, all of us will leave. The Nahual said that if you decide to be with us, the first thing I should tell you is that you have to remember your bouts with Soledad and the little sisters, and examine every single thing that happened to you with them, because everything is an omen of what will happen to you on your path. If you are careful and impeccable, you'll find that those bouts were gifts of power. What's Doña Soledad going to do now? She's leaving. The little sisters have already helped her to take her floor apart. The floor aided her to reach her attention of the Nahual. The lines had power to do that. Each of them helped her gather a piece of that attention. To be incomplete is no handicap to reaching that attention for some warriors. Soledad was transformed because she got to that attention faster than any of us. She doesn't have to gaze at her floor anymore to go into that other world. And now that there is no more need for the floor, she has returned it to the earth where she got it. You are really determined to leave, Gorda, aren't you? All of us are. That's why I'm asking you to go away for a few days to give us time to pull down everything we have. Am I the one who has to find a place for all of you, Gorda? If you were an impeccable warrior, you would do just that. But you're not an impeccable warrior, and neither are we. But still, we will have to do our best to meet our new challenge. I felt an oppressive sense of doom. I have never been one to thrive on responsibilities. I thought that the commitment to guide them was a crushing burden that I could not handle. Maybe we don't have to do anything, I said. Yes, that's right, she said, and laughed. Why don't you tell yourself that over and over until you feel safe? The Nahual told you time and time again that the only freedom warriors have is to behave impeccably. She told me how the Nahual had insisted that all of them understand that not only was impeccability freedom, but it was the only way to scare away the human form. I narrated to her the way Don Juan made me understand what was meant by impeccability. He and I were hiking one day through a very steep ravine when a huge boulder got loose from its matrix on the rock wall and came down with a formidable force and landed on the floor of the canyon, 20 or 30 yards from where we were standing. The size of the boulder made its fall a very impressive event. Don Juan had seized the opportunity to create a dramatic lesson. He said that the force that rules our destinies is outside of ourselves and has nothing to do with our acts or volition. Sometimes that force would make us stop walking on our way and bend over to tie our shoelaces, as I had just done. And by making us stop, that force makes us gain a precious moment. If we had kept on walking, that enormous boulder would have most certainly crushed us to death. Some other day, however, in another ravine, the same outside deciding force would make us stop again to bend over and tie our shoelaces, while another boulder would get loose precisely above where we are standing. By making us stop, that force would have made us lose a precious moment. That time, if we had kept on walking, we would have saved ourselves. Don Juan said that in view of my total lack of control over the forces which decide my destiny, my only possible freedom in that ravine consisted in my tying my shoelaces impeccably. La Gorda seemed to be moved by my account. For an instant she held my face in her hands from across the table. Impeccability for me is to tell you at the right time what the Nahual told me to tell you, she said. But power has to time perfectly what I have to reveal to you, or it won't have any effect. She paused in a dramatic fashion. Her delay was very studied, but terribly effective with me. What is it? I asked desperately. She did not answer. She took me by the arm and led me to the area just outside the front door. She made me sit on the hard-packed ground with my back against a thick pole about 1.5 feet high that looked like a tree stump which had been planted in the ground almost against the wall of the house. There was a row of 5 such poles planted about 2 feet apart. I had meant to ask La Gorda what their function was. My first impression had been that a former owner of the house had tied animals to them. But my conjecture seemed incongruous, however, because the area just outside the front door was a kind of roofed porch. I told La Gorda my supposition as she sat down next to me to my left, with her back against another pole. She laughed and said that the poles were indeed used for tying animals of sorts, but not by a former owner, and that she had nearly broken her back digging the holes for them. What do you use them for? I asked. Let's say that we tie ourselves to them, she replied. And this brings me to the next thing the Nahual asked me to tell you. He said that because you were empty, he had to gather your second attention, your attention of the Nahual, in a way different than ours. We gathered that attention through dreaming, and you did it with his power plants. The Nahual said that his power plants gathered the menacing side of your second attention in one clump, and that's the shape that came out of your head. He said that that's what happens to sorcerers when they are given power plants. If they don't die, the power plants spin their second attention into that awful shape that comes out of their heads. Now we're coming to what he wanted you to do. He said that you must change directions now and begin gathering your second attention in another way, more like us. You can't keep on the path of knowledge unless you balance your second attention. So far, that attention of yours has been riding on the Nawal's power, but now you are alone. That's what he wanted me to tell you. How do I balance my second attention? You have to do dreaming the way we do it. Dreaming is the only way to gather the second attention without injuring it, without making it menacing and awesome. Your second attention is fixed on the awful side of the world. Ours is on the beauty of it. You have to change sides and come with us. That's what you chose last night when you decided to go with us. Could that shape come out of me at any time? No, the Nawal said that it won't come out again until you're as old as he is. Your Nawal has already come out as many times as was needed. The Nawal and Gennaro have seen to that. They used to tease it out of you. The Nawal told me that sometimes you were a hair away from dying because your second attention is very indulging. He said that once you even scared him. Your Nawal attacked him and he had to sing to it to calm it down. But the worst thing happened to you in Mexico City. There, he pushed you one day and you went into an office, and in that office you went through the crack between the worlds. He intended only to dispel your attention of the tonal. You were worried sick over some stupid thing. But when he shoved you, your whole tonal shrunk and your entire being went through the crack. He had a hellish time finding you. He told me that for a moment he thought you had gone farther than he could reach. But then he saw you roaming around aimlessly, and he brought you back. He told me that you went through the crack around 10 in the morning. So on that day, 10 in the morning became your new time. My new time for what? For everything. If you remain a man, you will die around that time. If you become a sorcerer, you will leave this world around that time. Eligio also went on a different path, a path none of us knew about. We met him just before he left. Eligio was a most marvelous dreamer. He was so good that the Nawal and Gennaro used to take him through the crack, and he had the power to withstand it as if it were nothing. He didn't even pant. The Nawal and Gennaro gave him a final boost with power plants. He had the control and the power to handle that boost. And that's what sent him to wherever he is. The Gennaros told me that Eligio jumped with Benigno. Is that true? Sure. By the time Eligio had to jump, his second attention had already been in that other world. The Nawal said that yours had also been there, but that for you it was a nightmare because you had no control. He said that his power plants had made you lopsided. They had made you cut through your attention of the tonal and had put you directly in the realm of your second attention, but without any mastery over that attention. The Nawal didn't give power plants to Eligio until the very last. Don't you think that my second attention has been injured, Gorda? The Nawal never said that. He thought you were dangerously crazy but that has nothing to do with power plants. He said that both of your attentions are unmanageable. If you could conquer them, you'd be a great warrior. I wanted her to tell me more on the subject. She put her hand on my writing pad and said that we had a terribly busy day ahead of us, and we needed to store energy in order to withstand it. We had, therefore, to energize ourselves with the sunlight. She said that the circumstances required that we take the sunlight with the left eye. She began to move her head slowly from side to side as she glanced directly into the sun through her half-closed eyes. A moment later, Lydia, Rosa, and Josefina joined us. Lydia sat to my right, Josefina sat next to her, while Rosa sat next to La Gorda. All of them were resting their backs against the poles. I was in the middle of the row. It was a clear day. The sun was just above the distant range of mountains. They started moving their heads in perfect synchronization. I joined them and had the feeling that I too had synchronized my motion with theirs. They kept it up for about a minute and then stopped. All of them wore hats and used the brims to protect their faces from the sunlight when they were not bathing their eyes in it. La Gorda had given me my old hat to wear. We sat there for about half an hour. In that time, we repeated the exercise countless times. I intended to make a mark on my pad for each time, but La Gorda very casually pushed my pad out of reach. Lydia suddenly stood up, mumbling something unintelligible. La Gorda leaned over to me and whispered that the Gennaros were coming up the road. I strained to look, but there was no one in sight. Rosa and Josefina also stood up and then went with Lydia inside the house. I told La Gorda that I could not see anyone approaching. She replied that the Gennaros had been visible at one point on the road, and added that she had dreaded the moment when all of us would have to get together, but that she was confident that I could handle the situation. She advised me to be extra careful with Josefina and Pablito because they had no control over themselves. She said that the most sensible thing for me to do would be to take the Gennaros away after an hour or so. I kept looking at the road. There was no sign of anyone approaching. "Are you sure they're coming?" I asked. She said that she had not seen them, but that Lydia had. The Gennaros had been visible just for Lydia, because she had been gazing at the same time she had been bathing her eyes. I was not sure what La Gorda had meant, and asked her to explain. "We are gazers," she said, "just like yourself. We are all the same. There is no need to deny that you're a gazer. The Nahual told us about your great feats of gazing." "My great feats of gazing? What are you talking about, Gorda?" She contracted her mouth and appeared to be on the verge of being irritated by my question. She seemed to catch herself. She smiled and gave me a gentle shove. At that moment, she had a sudden flutter in her body. She stared blankly past me, then she shook her head vigorously. She said that she had just seen that the Gennaros were not coming after all. It was too early for them. They were going to wait for a while before they made their appearance. She smiled as if she were delighted with a delay. It's too early for us to have them here anyway, she said, and they feel the same way about us. Well, where are they now? I asked. They must be sitting beside the road somewhere, she replied. Benigno had no doubt gazed at the house as they were walking and saw us sitting here, and that's why they have decided to wait. That's perfect. That will give us time. You scare me, Gorda. Time for what? You have to round up your second attention today, just for us four. How can I do that? I don't know. You are very mysterious to us. The Nahual has done scores of things to you with his power plants, but you can't claim that as knowledge. That is what I've been trying to tell you. Only if you have mastery over your second attention can you perform with it. Otherwise, you'll always stay fixed halfway between the two, as you are now. Everything that has happened to you since you arrived has been directed to force that attention to spin. I've been giving you instructions little by little, just as the Nahual told me to do. Since you took another path, you don't know the things that we know. Just like we don't know anything about power plants. Soledad knows a bit more, because the Nahual took her to his homeland. Nestor knows about medicinal plants, but none of us has been taught the way you were. We don't need your knowledge yet. But someday, when we are ready, you are the one who will know what to do to give us a boost with power plants. I am the only one who knows where the Nahual's pipe is hidden, waiting for that day. The Nahual's command is that you have to change your path and go with us. That means that you have to do dreaming with us and stalking with the Gennaros. You can't afford any longer to be where you are, on the awesome side of your second attention. Another jolt of your Nahual coming out of you could kill you. The Nahual told me that human beings are frail creatures composed of many layers of luminosity. When you see them, they seem to have fibers, but those fibers are really layers, like an onion. Jolts of any kind separate those layers and can even cause human beings to die. She stood up and led me back to the kitchen. We sat down facing each other. Lydia, Rosa, and Josefina were busy in the yard. I could not see them, but I could hear them talking and laughing. The Nahual said that we die because our layers become separated, La Gorda said. Jolts are always separating them, but they get together again. Sometimes, though, the jolt is so great that the layers get loose and can't get back together anymore. Have you ever seen the layers, Gorda? Sure. I saw a man dying in the street. The Nahual told me that you also found a man dying, but you didn't see his death. The Nahual made me see the dying man's layers. They were like the peels of an onion. When human beings are healthy, they are like luminous eggs. But if they are injured, they begin to peel like an onion. The Nahual told me that your second attention was so strong sometimes that it pushed all the way out. He and Gennaro had to hold your layers together Otherwise, you would have died. That's why he figured that you might have enough energy to get your nawal out of you twice. He meant that you could hold your layers together by yourself twice. You did it more times than that, and now you are finished. You have no more energy to hold your layers together in case of another jolt. The nawal has entrusted me to take care of everyone. In your case, I have to help you tighten your layers. The nawal said that death pushes the layers apart. He explained to me that the center of our luminosity, which is the attention of the nawal, is always pushing out, and that's what loosens the layers. So it's easy for death to come in between them and push them completely apart. Sorcerers have to do their best to keep their own layers closed. That's why the nawal taught us dreaming. Dreaming tightens the layers. When sorcerers learn dreaming, they tie together their two attentions, and there is no more need for that center to push out. Do you mean that sorcerers do not die? That is right. Sorcerers do not die. Do you mean that none of us is going to die? I didn't mean us. We are nothing. We are freaks, neither here nor there. I meant sorcerers. The nawal and Gennaro are sorcerers. Their two attentions are so tightly together that perhaps they'll never die. Did the nawal say that, Gorda? Yes, he and Gennaro both told me that. Not too long before they left, the nawal explained to us the power of attention. I never knew about the tonal and the nawal until then.